Well, you learn something every day. I learned today that Todd is dyslexic. I told him I was going to be preaching from Proverbs 31, not 13. So, no. Anyhow, if you would take out your Old Testament and turn to Proverbs 31, that's where we're going to be this morning. As I've mentioned here several times before, a lot of things collide in my mind at times and points me to the direction of a sermon. What's collided this time is that I saw an article, or a link, I guess, to an article from Bentley University. I don't know anything about their basketball team or football. I don't even know where they are. But Bentley University has this article that says, millennials are saying no to traditional marriage in record numbers, and that's not all. I had seen that the birth rate in the United States has been plummeting to the point now that citizens are not producing enough children to repopulate. Now, immigration is going to take care of that for us, but what I had read here was consistent with what I remembered. And in just a moment, I'm going to ask for audience participation on something. I've done this lesson here twice before. I did it in 2012 and I did it in 2017. And if I'm still here in 25 or 26 and you're still here in 25 or 26, you're going to hear it again. And I'll explain why in just a moment. It says the median age of first marriage is now 27 for women and 29 for men, up from 20 from women and 23 for men in 1960. So in 1960, 20-year-old women and 23-year-old men, that was the norm at the time they got married. Now it has moved up 7 years for women and 6 for men, which goes to explain that they're having fewer children. So, you young folks, your parents always tell you don't turn around and don't look behind you in church. In just a moment, I want you to do just that. And for the rest of us, I want your hands up if this fits with you. How many of you in this room were married by the time you were 25? Look around, kids. Okay, put them down. The reason I do this lesson every few years here is that we have a continual group of young people who are getting into that age where they're going to start thinking about marriage. And we're going to look today at the virtuous wife as it's set forth in Proverbs 31, the excellent wife I have on the board, because we just had 4 young people graduate high school here. There's one of them walking to his chair right now. And Zoe, and then 2 who I don't see with us this morning, Kenley and Caitlin. And we've got 4 in this congregation, one of whom got married yesterday, who are thinking of marriage. We've got Riley, Elizabeth, and Hadley. And only one of them's here to hear this today. So if you parents, I want you to take notes and pass this on to your daughters and sons who are not here. If you're not quite to the out of high school age yet, by the way, if you just graduated high school based on the show of hands, you're closer to getting married than you were to starting school. Think about it. You're closer to the time that you're going to be married and starting your life as a couple than when you started kindergarten. I understand there's some people here who may never get married, and that's okay. It's not required. But this lesson is designed for 3 groups of people. It's designed for the young women, it's designed for the young men, and it's designed for everyone else. Okay, let's start with, it's about the excellent wife, but a little about her husband. Get your Old Testament out because we're going to read these 22 verses, and then I'm going to have a few thoughts about them as we go through them. Reading from the New American Standard, Proverbs 31, starting in verse 10. An excellent wife who can find, for her worth is far above jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. She's like merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is still night and gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. From her earnings she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. She stretches out her hand to the distaff, and her hands grasp the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor, and she stretches out her hands to the needy. She's not afraid of the snow for her household are all clothed with scarlet. She makes covering for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known at the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them and supplies belts to the tradesmen. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth in wisdom. The teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the way of her household and does not eat of the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and bless her, her husband also, and he praises her, saying, Many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord shall be praised. Give her the product of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gate. I've got jotted down, 7 or 8 subpoints we're going to hit fairly quickly here about qualities that this excellent wife has. The first one I've got here is that she does good to her husband always. She's industrious. It tells us that she works. She's a good manager of her home. That's what's important to her, and therefore she spends her time managing and taking care of it. She helps others outside the home, and she prepares for the future. But notice, she smiles when she does it. It's not the sense of dread for the future. It's a sense of looking forward to. She controls her tongue. She minds her own business. And we're going to have another one. Oh, okay, and she fears God. I've got all those on this same one. Look at these qualities, these 8 that I have there. What is this describing? It's describing a Christian. Looks out after the interest of his or her spouse, always. Not looking to strike back, not looking to harm, because the two become one flesh. And unless there's some sort of mental issue, a person doesn't intentionally hurt themselves. So this wife does good for her husband. Let me tell you, it goes both ways. The being industrious, Christians are not lazy people. Christians are good managers at their home. They learn how to budget. They learn how to live within their means. They help others. That's what Christians do. Not only of the congregation, but also without. Preparing for the future, you better believe that Christians are preparing for the future. They're preparing for eternity. And when we think about that, when we think about spending eternity with God, we better be smiling about that idea. We control our tongue, we mind our own business, and we have a reverence or a fear for God. So while the proverb writer was writing 1,000 years or so before Christ, and before there were any Christians on this earth, what he just did here was describe a Christian woman. Now some of you may say, well, wait a minute, I know some women who aren't Christians and they fit several of these categories. So do I. But the Christian woman should hit all of these. And guess what? To the extent that they can be reversed, the Christian man should as well. Because of her qualities, she's blessed by her children and praised by her husband. We'll come back to the praise of the husband. But those of us who were blessed with having a mother that had those qualities, and I will tell you that this passage was used at my mom's funeral, and nobody was giggling when it was being used because she was one of these people. And her 3 sons recognize it. Let me tell you, parents, that your children are looking at how you live together as a couple as the ideal or as the model for what they're going to be looking for. Now, I've heard it said, if you can't be a good example, then be a horrible reminder. And perhaps some children see how their parents behaved and said, I'm not doing that. And they look for something else. But generally speaking, the child is going to find someone that shares the quality of their parent. The daughter will find someone that shares the qualities of her father. The son will find people that share the qualities of their mother. Notice that her works praise her. Doesn't seem like there's any self-aggrandizement that she's posting all over Facebook about how great she is. No, her pride is in control. Her focus is on her family. Her goal is heaven for herself and her family. And the reason I do this lesson every few years is so that we can all keep in mind what it is that we need to be as a spouse if we're already married, or what we need to be looking for as a spouse if we're going to be relatively soon. But I said there were a few things about the husband we need to look at. The first one is he understands her worth. Would not trade her for jewels. Doesn't say how many jewels. Doesn't matter how many jewels. What this is saying is there's not enough, you can't pile them up high enough for him to say, okay, I'll trade. That's what the excellent wife is. It's worth more than anything in the world. He trusts in her. And once trust is broken, it's really hard to repair. I'm not saying it can't be repaired, but it's hard to repair. And you young women who are going to become wives need to be the kind of person your husband can trust. And that goes the other way as well. Men, you need to be the kind of husband your wife can trust. And he praises her. Men here who are married, think about the last time you said some encouraging words to your wife. I hope it was this morning or yesterday. But if you're going to go, then maybe you need to be thinking about doing it more often, because not only does she want to hear it, she needs to hear it. We, as I pointed out through this, should share many of her qualities. Husbands should be doing good to her and others. Husbands should be preparing for the future, especially that future with the Lord. Husbands need to control their tongue, needs to mind his own business, and need to serve God along with her. So in conclusion, single women, you need to use this as your guide before you're married so that you can attract a single man that recognizes your value. Your value as a person, your value as a child of God. Married women, if you've been married 2 years, 10 years, 40, 60, we got some 60s here. Follow these principles and you can make your home today what God would want it to be. Men, you need to appreciate quality when you see it, and you need to appreciate it if you already have it. And I'm going to tell you, if you back up and look at this list again, let me back up to the list of qualities here. There's probably not any of these on the board. If I ask for a show of hands, your pride would keep you from raising your hand if you think you hit all 8 of them, men or women. It's something that we can continue to work on always. But I'm going to tell you, the better Christian you are, the better spouse you will be, or the better spouse you will become when that time comes. So in concluding this lesson, I want to urge you not to fret so much about being a spouse just for a moment, but think about how you're doing as a Christian. And if you're not yet a Christian, then you need to think about becoming one. Because it will make it a whole lot easier to have these qualities in your life if you have put God first. You then put your spouse second, and you put yourself third. Not easy to do. Pride wants us to crawl to the top of the list. But once we understand the order of things, we will be better spouses, we'll be better Christians. We're here this morning to help you with becoming a Christian if you've never done that. We're also here to help you with prayer if you've become a Christian in the past, but realize that you are lacking some of these qualities that are on the board, and you think prayers of the congregation would help. We're here to help you. Just let us know as together we stand and sing.
I could know